Hi, I'm Brian Welsh, and this is the Blocktalk podcast. Here we want to have real conversations about what's happening in the industry, what's happening in the block management manufacturing industry, what the challenges are, and what's shaping the future. I started it to talk to people who live it day to day, industry experts, government, anyone else who's a stakeholder who feeds into that industry. So whether you're here for a fresh perspective, insight, inspiration, whatever you're here for, I'm glad you're listening. Thanks very much. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Blocktalk podcast with me, Brian Welsh. It's actually been a while. We've not done a podcast for, I don't know, about 6 months, and but we have two planned every month for the next year, so which is great. So today I'm joined by Neale Bisset, chair of what was PMAS, now TPI Scotland. He's in the room with me in Glasgow, and Andrew Bulmer, who's the CEO of TPI. He is remote in his office somewhere south of Hadrian's Wall. So welcome, guys. Well, thanks for coming on. We're here to talk about, well, the merger of PMAS and TPI, which I guess is a fairly big thing in property management in Scotland. So I just wanted to kind of chat to both of you, get both kind of views on certain things to do with the merger. So Andrew, if I can come to you first, can you talk us through the background of the merger? Why now? When was it conceived? You know, what everything around that? That would be great if you could kind of give us some information.
Sure, very happy to. First thing to say, though, is that I am working from home this morning, and at some point the postman is going to arrive, and my dog is going to go berserk. So at some point you're going to see me looking very distracted with the dog barking furiously in the background. She actually quite likes the postman, but you wouldn't think so when you're here. So for viewers and listeners, my apologies in advance. There was no defined starting point, really. We can wind the clock back to when are we looking at? About 2017. IRPM, as was, Institute of Residential Property Management, had a qualification, and the qualification for factoring in Scotland wasn't doing very well. So I met with a number of the industry leaders in Scotland and had a conversation, and we decided what was right with it and what was wrong with it. And one of the things that was wrong with it was that it wasn't conceived and built in Scotland. And therefore you lose tone, and tone in property management is such an important thing.
Yeah.
So the conversation went something along the lines of, IRPM are not going to come here and deliver a qualification. We will build a qualification in Scotland. We are now Scotland IRPM, as was. Okay. And to the great credit of those in the industry, they thought, okay, that makes sense. And so they put their shoulder to the wheel. They designed the course, specified it, what needed to go in it, found the author that they chose, and built that qualification. So it was very much a collaborative effort, but it was done in Scotland, of Scotland, by Scotland, for Scotland, and that's key. And that created a good relationship, and we worked closely with PMAS, who supported the effort and promoted the qualification, and it worked really well. And it's an illustration of how collaborative working and ownership created a good result, rather than saying you're the qualification provider, you go and deliver it. It was no, we're in this together. We will deliver this together. And so that collaborative approach just continued. And I think really it's this is just a natural extension of that. The working got closer and closer and closer. And then somebody said, well, hey, should we get married? So we got married, which is kind of nice, but it's a it is nothing more than a natural extension of a collaborative approach
Okay.
to supporting professionals and businesses in our sector.
Okay. Neale, anything to add?
Yeah, no, exactly like Andrew said. We'd been at PMAS, we'd been working with TPI very closely for a number of years, and it was, that relationship was only getting closer and stronger.
Yeah.
And as it progressed, it just naturally got to a point where a merger looked like it would make sense to both, and that there'd be real positives for both, benefiting TPI, benefiting the factoring industry in Scotland as well. And yeah, led to further discussions and a proper merger.
Okay, so as well as then, it was a natural progression, but were there key drivers behind it as well? Because obviously, there's a lot of differences between Scotland and England when it comes to, I don't know, health and safety. Well, maybe not health and safety, but certain things that happen. Building and safety and all of these sort of things. Were there any key drivers? Because when you think about other industries, when they do things, they take a kind of broad brush approach to it and they just stick a kilt on it, right, or dekilt it to take it south of the border. You can, I don't know, contract law, let's take as an example, very, very similar throughout the UK. You just need to kilt or dekilt a contract. So, but there must have been some key drivers that would benefit Scotland in the merger as well. What were those key drivers?
You're asking me,
Andrew?
or are you asking me?
Yeah, go on, Andrew. Go on, you go.
I think in the commercial world, generally, you do a merger to save costs, create efficiencies.
Yep.
You only need one person running the company car scheme, etc., etc.
Yeah.
This was completely different.
Okay.
This is about growing the offering in Scotland. There was the TPI machinery in terms of the technical stuff, membership database. There's £250,000 worth of CRM system, for example, that's running the database. The publication bit, the branding bit, all those kind of things. So there's a machinery which we can bring to Scotland. But you spoke of differences. I think what strikes me is that in terms of the legislative structure, in terms of the tenure law, Scotland is different to England. Yeah. But in terms of the problems that property managers face, if you sit down and have a cup of coffee with a factor in Scotland, you find the conversation turns out to be much the same. Trying to get buildings fixed, trying to get through disrepair, building safety, the building safety crisis, not a cladding crisis, I won't call that a cladding crisis, but the building safety crisis. When you start to unpick the various different threads of work, the lived experience of a factor versus a property manager in England, you find that you're banging your head against the same problems. Now, the law may be different, but there are the commonalities in terms of the problems that you face are very similar.
Okay. Yeah. No, I would agree with that totally. From your point of view, Neale?
And yeah, from sort of maybe a couple of the key drivers from Scotland's point of view, from PMAS, we'd been growing our voice in the industry and with the major stakeholders like Scottish Government.
Yeah.
And it's gotten to a point where PMAS was the main voice for the factoring industry in Scotland. But we also wanted to grow our offering to our members as well. And that's something that obviously when we had the discussions with TPI, they're able to help us grow that offering to our members and also make that voice even louder as well.
Okay. And was there any resistance to the idea when tabled? Because I'm assuming that obviously the membership were spoken to within PMAS, and was there any resistance?
There was very little resistance at all within PMAS. We had a discussion and put it to our members at the AGM that we held in March, and the vote resulted, I think it was a 98% approval for the merger. So the overwhelming majority of our members were fully on board with it. They could see the positives from it, and yeah, allowed us to push on with it.
Okay. And from your side, Andrew, any resistance at all?
In truth be told, we didn't need to go to a vote for our members, but in conversations, in discussions, there is so much to learn from Scotland. Scotland has already gone through a regulatory journey, for example.
Yep, sure.
And England is moving towards potentially common hold. Certainly down that ground rents have been outlawed, new developments will be resident controlled. And so culturally, England is moving much more towards slowly a Scottish system, and there's a great deal to learn. There's also just a sense that it's bringing the UK together, and we still have an anomaly, an important anomaly in Northern Ireland, which has its own set of rules again. But other than that, it also creates a UK-wide proposition where you can learn and cross-fertilize knowledge and experience from different regions. So absolutely no pushback whatsoever. It's a very much a warm welcome.
I mean, just touching on the Northern Ireland market, which you've done, and it was going through my mind when we were just having that conversation. I mean, very much Northern Ireland is more akin from a financial accounting process and all of these sort of things, like England rather than Scotland, anyway. So, okay, all right. So let's talk about what actually changes in practice. Post merger, if we can. So, Neale, for Scottish property managers, what's the difference today versus a year ago?
Well, the structure of the TPI Scotland board it's very similar. It's all the same people. So PMAS Council, it was made up of highly experienced industry leaders from the factoring industry, and all of those have transferred over and are now the TPI Scotland board. So it's still got the same level of Scottish expertise and experience that are spearheading it, but we've got the added support that TPI brings to it. We've got Graham Hartley, who's taken on the role of executive director for Scotland with TPI, and then we get support from their events team, finance, marketing, policy teams, which is a huge bit of support that the TPI Scotland board can lean on.
Okay, so Graham's doing a job that Alison, I guess, used to do then when it was PMA.
Yeah. So Graham and Alison, they worked on a handover, probably a good few months handover, so that our members should basically notice no real difference, and it's the same industry leaders leading the way. Okay.
And in this new structure, Andrew, Scotland is obviously represented by Graham, obviously feeding into TPI, I'm guessing. I mean, I've got a rule of thumb that an old sales director of mine told me, and that is Scotland is 10% the size of England, whether you're talking about pubs, cars, block management companies, properties, whatever. So you've got a kind of a part of the structure of TPI that makes up about 10% of it. How's that represented in the whole TPI structure?
That's an interesting question. It's not about being represented in the TPI structure. TPI Scotland has its own board and its own control over its own destiny. The way to think of it is that PMAS was a self-contained, distinct body of long and proud history in its own right, and as has just been said, that kind of continues, but we've got more oomph behind it. The centralizing just the publication. So, for example, there's now a monthly newsletter. It's called The Grid. That's going to go out to members, but it's bespoke and for and of Scotland, and that will continue to evolve and improve. But there's a machinery, the delivery machinery, the fact that it looks attractive when it gets sent out. That's because there's a design team that's worked on the design and thought about the logo. So there's access to capabilities from the larger organisation, but Scotland has and must remain very much a distinct operation in control of its own destiny and making its own decisions, and that's key. The moment you try to centralise it and centralise everything and just create a one size fits all solution, you will lose local relevance.
Yeah,
and you can't do that. You mustn't do that. It's got to be in Scotland, of Scotland, by Scotland, for Scotland.
Good. Okay, and I guess then the TPI Scotland, so TPI Scotland is effectively PMAS with put an eloquently way with a bit of oomph from Andrew. So, well, that's his comment. So you just have all of these resources behind you that you probably didn't have before.
Yeah, and I mean, but it's still the same. As I said, I touched on it. It's still the same people, but we're now able to offer a lot more to the membership. The monthly newsletter that Andrew touched on is something that we've wanted to do at PMAS, but didn't really have the resources to do that. So it's allowing us to do that. It's also allow us to look at more education and training and events throughout the calendar as well. The two main events that PMAS did was the conference in October, and then the awards in March. So they're going to remain. They're going to continue. They're going to be bigger and better than they were before.
Okay. I noticed the conference has moved location.
So. Yes, yeah. So that shows the commitment for that. We've moved to a new location, and it's now called the TPI Scotland Connect. And the aim is for that to be even bigger and better than before. So it's really exciting. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, good. Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to the conference as well, actually. Okay, so there is a difference, obviously, in how the two, well, Scotland and England are work. So obviously Scotland has regulation, legislation. Andrew, if I can come to you, what do you see as the key differences in how property management is regulated north and south of the border? Because you would like to have regulation, obviously, in England. I heard something was said at a conference that I was at, a seminar I was at, when I heard you speak. So,
yeah, the chalk and cheese. What are the differences? Well, factoring is regulated. And it's state regulated, whereas in England there is no regulation at all, either of individuals or of firms. And there is a lack of trust, I think, between the consumer and the managing agent in England. And some of that is because some managing agents have performed poorly. And we have long called for, I mean, gosh, how far back are we going? Lord Best published his report in 2019. Working group was working on it there for 2018. So where are we now? That's 7 years. And Lord Best was asked to do his report because of a rising clamour, a call for regulation. So we're going back, I would say, a good 10 years. For a good 10 years, industry in England has been calling for regulation. Scotland already has it, and it's not perfect. No regulatory regime ever is. But we wait to see what happens in England, because government has announced that it's going to bring forward mandatory qualifications. But not regulating the firms.
Okay.
So there will be, what it's doing, it's setting a minimum competency standard, which is a good thing.
Yep.
And that doesn't happen in Scotland, so it's different.
Doesn't know. Yeah.
Now you've got a regulated sector, but there's no minimum competency standard.
Yep.
There's no requirement. There's no hurdle to jump in order to prove your competence before you act as a factor. So they're very different approaches. England has gone for competency standards without regulation, whereas Scotland has gone for regulation, but without mandating qualifications. Yeah, we will. And we will see how that works out.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess utopia for you guys from a TPI point of view would be regulation, minimum competency, training, all of these sort of things, and CPD that you get in other industries to do, like RICS and these sort of places. Would that be the kind of end goal for you guys?
It's not a goal because we're not running a business. We're not in the. We're a member organization.
Well, okay. Well, replace goal with desire.
So it's not about growing a business. We can get more members, or we can get more money. We can drive up fees. We can do this and that. Those objectives don't exist.
Right.
The RICS founding fathers, they don't use the phrase now, but they should. The founding fathers spoke of promoting the usefulness of the profession for the public good.
Right.
And it's a really good phrase, and RICS should pick it up again. But they're not using it, so I'll nick it. Why not? I'm a chartered surveyor. I can use this phrase, but it's a really good way of explaining the role of a professional body. It's not there as a commercial enterprise. It is there to promote its membership, is to support its members. But the objective is for the public good. We speak of Maslow's needs. First thing water, second thing liquid, second thing is food, and the third thing is shelter. And how people feel when they walk up their path or walk up their stairs to their home makes a huge difference to all of the different outcomes that government is involved in, whether it's physical health, mental health, social services, crime rates. The ability of children to do their homework and have academic achievement and drive the economy. All of these things fall out of housing. It all falls out of housing. And if we can in some way improve housing, improve the lived experience of people when they live in their homes, then we affect all of those key areas of public policy. So I've slightly lost the thread of the questions. I've gone off on one, but my point is that we're not here as a commercial enterprise. We're not here as a goal. We're not saying, well, if we can bring forward mandatory qualifications, we'll make a ton of money out of selling qualifications. No, if we can bring forward mandatory qualifications because it makes the world a better place.
Well, that was more the point of the question. The kind of, okay, I mean, I tried to find a non-commercial way to say this, but the desire of the TPI, from everything you've just talked about, would be that you have competent people in every business who's providing the service to a homeowner, or someone who lives in a block of flats, or whatever you want to call them, customer, resident, but also have a regulation so that there's trust and credibility in everybody in that role, in every business in that role.
Exactly so.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think we've there was a question, where do we see real opportunities to learning between jurisdictions? I think, is there anything else anyone wants to say about that? Kind of the learning, because they are different. Yeah, obviously England can learn from, and you mentioned that they're moving more towards common hold and these sort of things. So is there anything else that can be learned between the two jurisdictions?
Well, let's take disrepair as an example.
Yep.
So there is an issue in bringing together funds and bringing together residents to get buildings fixed.
Yep.
And so what we're seeing in England is that they are bringing forward that there's a consultation which is live at the moment. We're speaking in July. And one of the parts of that consultation is, should England bring forward mandatory planned maintenance programs and mandatory reserve funds,
Right.
specifically to address this issue of not putting money away for the future to fix the roof in 10, 20, 30 years' time. And we will see what the outcome of that consultation is. On the one hand, it won't be very popular, because if you start to put money away in a savings scheme for the future, your service charges go up.
Yep.
But if you don't do that now, buildings will start to fall apart.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
Scotland
decay,
has its own version of that lived experience. We know that there are issues with buildings falling apart. And so, for example, we are doing research on life cost, the profile of life cost of a building. And it would seem that around about, when it's about 60-ish years old, it depends on the nature of the building, you get hit with a whole lot of bills all at the same time, lifts, roofs, and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
To the extent that it's almost cheaper to drop the thing and rebuild it than it is to keep fixing it.
Wow. Okay.
Now it depends on the nature of the building. I mean, if you've got a battleship brick built, or stone built town, it's a different beast. But certainly with modern construction, single ply roofs and all that kind of stuff, and lifts and what have you. Well, what does that do for the future? Because you're not going to drop a multi-owned building. You're going to keep fixing it.
Yeah.
And if you're going to keep fixing it, there's going to be a bill. And if there's going to be a big bill, that starts to cause problems with buyers. Are they going to start reflecting that when they make their bid for that property?
Yeah.
Are mortgage lenders going to start reflecting that in their offering of a mortgage?
Yeah.
Because if the service charge goes up, if the maintenance cost goes up, then that affects affordability.
Yeah.
The affordability calculation. And if they start to cramp that affordability calculation, then that starts to change the price, the price that people are able to bid and get a mortgage for it. So that's quite a big conversation, because you're talking about resetting prices, potentially.
Yeah.
You're talking about people's ability to pay, the liquidity of the market. So, and the research that sits behind that, and the discussion that sits behind that, do we fix our buildings today, or do we fix our buildings tomorrow? When do we save for that? It's a bit in depth as a conversation, but it is ultimately going to affect mortgageability. It's going to affect the prices of properties.
Yeah.
And that doesn't change just because of the jurisdiction. A building will fall apart.
Yeah.
Because
That's
it gets
very
old,
true.
Irrespective of where it's at. So it's just one example where that research, that thinking, is important. And because Scotland dispensed with leasehold and it's had its own tenure for these years, you can see the impact of a community putting money aside or not putting money aside to fix the building. So there's an experience there already. And as England moved towards self-determination, self-control of buildings, the danger is that we walk into the same trap.
Yeah.
And hence the government is consulting on it at the moment. So it's just one example of where you've got the common problem with a different jurisdiction and a different set of legislation. But you can learn. You can
From
both parties can learn and cross-pollinate that information.
Which is a great thing. I mean, taking your example of a 60-year-old build, or the building that's built and then 60 years later starts falling into disrepair or needing work done to it. The guys that have lived in it for the first 20 got away scot-free, right? The guys for the next 20 got away scot-free, and then the guys that moved in then and there happen to be at 60 have to pay for all of the, let's call it, wear and tear of the previous 60 years. And I mean, I used to own a flat in Glasgow that I used as a bolt hole when I didn't live in Glasgow. And I remember moving into it, had it for a couple of years, then moved to Glasgow, sold it. Then, I mean, it was factored. I was reminded when I wrote a post on LinkedIn on Friday that I've been serving this industry with software for 26 years. That's more than half my life. Well, maybe not. close to more than half my life. And you know, so I should understand this better than most. I move out, and then, you know, 2 years later, there's a $300,000 roof repair needed, you know, and I'm like, you know, and wow, you know, and I don't recall if there was a sinking fund or not. I don't remember, but I'm not entirely sure. But yeah,
it is a common problem, as Andrew's spoken about. It doesn't matter whether you're south of the border or north. It's something that we're discussing with the Tenement Maintenance Working Group. The Scottish Government is implementing whether you can do compulsory sinking funds as part of that, because it needs to be looked at, and you need it in place early on. So that when you get to that age, 60, there's enough of a sinking fund to actually cover the cost.
Yeah, because and stop the guys when they move out phoning up and saying, how much in the sinking fund can I get my money back? Yeah, exactly, which is just not what it's built for at all in any way, shape or form. Okay, so I think we've done this wee bit. I just want to touch on this, and we don't need to go into too much detail. This one's for you, Neale. Although there has been some stuff in the English press as well. There's been a number or an article or one or two articles in the Times, actually, the Scottish section of the Times, where homeowners move in only to be presented with unexpected charges, like historic debt, spreading, and all of these sort of things. And actually, we have a couple of podcasts coming up with someone from a leader in the factoring industry and an MSP. Got a couple of them coming up. How do you get around that? I mean, how is it the conveyancing process? How does somebody move in and not know that they're about to get hit with some debt?
Sorry. It would be at the conveyancing stage, where normally, as a factor, you would hear from the selling solicitor. Okay. And they would ask for information. They'd ask for what the factoring charge is, and if there's any works ongoing that a purchaser might be liable for. Yep. And it seemed at that point they could request the levels of debt on the development and all that. Okay. And in that way it can be done right before this purchaser comes in and agrees on the deal, basically. Okay.
So it looks like the owner sits with a conveyancing process to ask the question.
Yeah, absolutely, because there's no doubt there's been instances where the factor doesn't know that the property's even been sold until they hear from the new owner. So
in some respects, they don't even get asked any questions.
Exactly, yeah. So don't have that opportunity to give them the information they maybe want. So it's definitely at that conveyancing stage. Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. Okay, interesting. Okay, so just following on from that, there's been a lot of press recently, north and south of the border, actually, around perceived poor practice in property management in the UK in general. How does the merger help the sector respond to that? Because I've interviewed Andrew many times before. I always remember interviewing Nigel Glenn, who was in those days the CEO of Arma. And there was a lot of stuff in the press at the time. And he came on, in fact, I think he was the first or second person we interviewed the podcast. He'd had The Guardian beforehand, and he was going on to the BBC afterwards, which was a bit, well, yes. Anyway, moving on. So, there's PMAS have always spoken to government a lot. Mm-hmm. Arma, IRPM, and now TPI have always been engaged in a lot of conversation with government as well. But how does TPI being including Scotland now help Scotland respond to kind of this poor practice label that they're given in some respects?
Yeah, I mean, at PMAS, we've always reached out and had discussions with MSPs and Scottish Government, and to try and educate those out with the industry, because if you're not directly involved in it, then there can be a lack of knowledge or misunderstanding with some of it. Certainly the merger will only help that. It'll add a much larger voice to us up in north of the border, TPI Scotland. It'll also give us access to the MPs down in Westminster if there's ever discussions on Scotland there as well. So it just creates that one unified, louder voice that can reach out to those.
Okay. Andrew, do you have anything to add to
that? There's a number of components here. One is upskilling and driving competence. And competence is not just qualifications, it's not just knowledge, but it's also, competence is defined as SCEB, skills, knowledge, experience, and behaviours. The behaviours comes from being a member of a professional body and being a regulated profession. But the machinery of the Property Institute is designed to continue to inform. So you build that learned experience, you build those skills. So there's a competence piece, which is key to any profession. And as the industry becomes more complex, as the problems that we face, for example, building safety, become complex, it's really important that you continue to drive that home in terms of the competence and then the expectations that property building managers, whatever their title, are what is expected of them. So it's a multi-layered approach. In terms of the policy machinery, the Property Institute has a strong policy team, and we have recruited. Can't divulge more at the moment, but we have recruited somebody who is very much in Scotland, of Scotland, and steeped in the history of factoring, to work with the policy team on all matters of policy. So
You've got my brain doing cartwheels at the moment to try and work out who that is, but okay.
Well, all will be revealed in due course. But it's a good recruit, to say the least. And Neale spoke of having a louder voice. I probably wouldn't use the word louder. I would probably use what word could I use? Authoritative. It's the authoritative voice. It's the and backed by evidence. I mean, there's a saying that a statement without evidence is just an opinion. We'll take building repair again. So what is the cost of building repair? Well, where's your evidence? Where's the data that says that buildings are falling apart? Where's the data that says how much it's going to cost to repair? Where's the data that says in 20 years or 30 years or 60 years, this is what it's going to cost to repair? So there's a machinery that sits behind that is able to inform those opinions, so that when you do go into government, and by the way, PMS has done a fantastic job with government, that they've got really good rapport with government, but when you go into government, not only do you go in saying, this is our experience, we're the professionals, we can see these harms, but you're able to evidence it. And that becomes a much more powerful situation. You're in a much better position when you're able to go to government and say, but Minister, here are the costs. This is the train which is coming down the track. You now have that knowledge, Minister. What are we going to do?
Okay. Understood. Okay, so I've got a question here. How do you balance professional development with enforcing standards, or are they the same thing? Neale, what do you think?
Well, obviously we've been heavily involved in this with the introduction of the TPI diploma in property factoring, and that is aimed at obviously raising standards and the professional development within the factoring industry, and I think that, and being able to reach out to our members and offer that, we were doing it through PMAS, but now as TPI Scotland, it's it's easily accessible for all our members.
Yeah.
And I think that will help enforce the standards and within the industry. The more qualified people you can have in charge of these buildings, then the higher standard they're going to be looked after.
What's the take up, if you don't mind me asking, or do we know what if I could not tell you how many property managers there are in Scotland. I should maybe know the answer to that, but I didn't research. I'm guessing it's about 10% the size of England. But what is the take up pretty high on? I mean, I certainly hear a lot of our customers who make up a good chunk of the property factoring industry, and they are all very much behind it. But do you have I know it's not a commercial organisation, but do you have a kind of target of how many you want to get to go through it?
Yeah, I mean, in all the discussions with the TPI Scotland working group, there was a target that we had in mind, and that was, and we always seem to be meeting that target. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but there was a good uptake initially. A lot of it was from the TPI Scotland board member firms, and then there was more of an uptake following on from that as well. Once obviously word got out about how good the course was, and we were able to get testimonies from those that have done it. So I think it's done very, very well. It's been a big success, and it's been meeting the targets that's sort of been set for it.
Yeah. Okay. Good. And so one of the things we've talked about in this podcast for years and years and years, and many people have talked about it, is education of the homeowning public in Scotland to understand what a factor is, what they do, how they do it, and what the homeowner's responsibility is as well. But going back to the articles that we've seen about that have been in the Times and I mentioned earlier, do we think the merger will improve public trust in property factors and property managers in Scotland? Because obviously you've got this larger, more authoritative voice from something Andrew said, but you've also got this larger organisation and more resources behind, I guess. Do you think that will improve public trust?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, we'll be at PMAS. We really wanted to be issuing more information to our members, but also issuing doing more on social media, putting more out to those out with the industry as well. And the merger with TPI absolutely will help us do that. And we'll have much more support to be able to do that. We'll have the policy team, the marketing team, and all that behind us.
Okay.
So I think it can only improve that.
Okay. Andrew, any views?
Property management, building management, factoring it's rather like the Cheshire Cat, in that if it is done well, it becomes invisible.
Yeah.
And really, so far as the public perception is concerned, if it is done well, then people ignore it. People only spot when there's a problem. But if the building runs well and is, it's clean, it's well maintained, etc., then it doesn't become a conversation.
Yeah.
And it just gets, the activity as far as the consumer is concerned gets smaller and smaller and smaller until all you're left with is a smile.
Yeah.
And so there's one of the measures really is, building trust. Yes, that's absolutely key. But if it's cutting the noise, if nobody's talking about it anymore, then it means that it's probably being done really well. It's rather like, we've got plenty of people watching this who will have businesses, and they will be running IT. And if every day people are talking about, oh, my Outlook's crashed, or this is crashed, or that's crashed, then if people are talking about IT, something's wrong with the IT.
Yeah.
If nobody's talking about the IT and it just works, people get on with their lives, they get on with their job.
Yeah.
And so it should be with the home. It should just, it should, the activity becomes invisible if it's successful.
Yeah, that's a very good way to look at it, I guess. Yeah. Yes, very, very true. We wouldn't be talking about a lot of these things if they weren't being talked about. Okay, so we've covered off qualifications. I guess, and we've covered off standards and things like that. So here's a question: Will anything change in the qualification now that you've moved to be from PMAS to TPI Scotland? Is it, or is that qualification still absolutely fit for purpose and doing everything it needs to for Scotland?
Yeah, absolutely fit for purpose. That there won't be any big change to that. It's constantly when we had the TPI Scottish Working Group, a lot of the same people that are now TPI Scotland Board were sitting on that, and we're constantly we were reviewing it and seeing if there was updates that could be made in certain areas, or so it was constantly being looked at. But there won't be any big change to it, because it's exactly the same diploma course that's been looked at by the same people through TPI and PMAS.
Okay.
So there'll be no change following the merger.
Good. Okay. So moving on to kind of, I guess, the road ahead. What does success look like 12 months from now? Neale, do you want to take that first, and then we'll go to Andrew?
Yeah, so we've already had a number of successes since the merger. I think one of the things I've touched on is wanting to increase the offering to the membership, and that's already been done. We've introduced the monthly newsletter for Scotland, the grid, and that gives our members more information than ever before. And that is, as Andrew's touched on, it's bespoke, it's for Scotland, it's information relating to Scotland, and it'll have the input of TPI Scotland Board in it as well. So that's one of the quick successes we've already been able to achieve. In 12 months' time, I think we'll be able to look back on a very successful and educational conference in October, and an inspiring and engaging awards night in March, whilst also growing the membership, because we want to have as many member firms as involved as possible.
Right.
And I think we'll also be looking to try and get those that maybe hadn't joined PMAS, get them involved with us at TPI Scotland as well, and whether we get them involved in the TPI Scotland Board as well, and just so we can have more of a representation in it.
So do you think that? So you think that the actual offering to what was PMAS, non-TPI Scotland members in Scotland, do you think the offering to them and the reasons to come on board and become part of TPI Scotland is greater now that the merger's gone through?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And even if that is just constant information being relayed to the members, quite often at PMAS we couldn't really issue all the information we wanted to because of a lack of resource. But at TPI Scotland, we've already seen that start to feed through, and it'll only get louder.
Okay. And that would certainly help with the education process. And also, you're all, I guess, singing from the same hymn sheet at that point in time, aren't you? And there's more of a unification of the market if that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Andrew, any view from you about what success looks like 12 months from now, in a non-commercial sense, obviously?
It's about creating a community. It's about creating that sense of belonging. And that has to be based on the offering being relevant, useful, and good value. And it's about knowing that your professional body speaks for you. So it's information going out, the latest consultation, the latest case law or change or whatever it happens to be. That's mission critical when you're doing your day job. But also it's about representation. It's about knowing that your professional body understands your lived experience, understands your day, understands the problems, and then carries that information into government, so that when government make a rule or government change a piece of law or have a consultation, government make the right decisions based on the feedback from members. And it's absolutely key that members understand that it's their organisation and they belong to it, and they can take information out of it, they can take services, but also they need to put back in to their organisation, their body, with their views, with their experiences, with their knowledge, because that's where the organisation forms its opinions. That's where the organisation is able to then speak to government. And we speak of, speaking truth to power. This is where the harm is. This is where it's gone wrong. This is where, you need to do this thing because that will help to fix it or help to improve it, and then carry that in. So it's very much a symbiotic relationship. It's not your professional body sits over there, in a different place. Your professional body is here, and you are a professional, and you belong to. You have that sense of ownership of your professional body. So for me, it's that level of engagement, that two-way relationship, that feedback and that engagement, and we will see how that goes. But my sense is that we have in the Scottish membership a really engaged membership, who've got so much experience and so much knowledge, and capturing that, putting that through to government is absolutely key. So for me, it's engagement, I would say.
Okay. Good. Okay. All right. We seem to have covered off a number of the questions. So I think I have one final question. Okay. So we've talked a lot about the property management factoring businesses and how, what they're going to get from this, and actually the ones that aren't members now or have lapsed their membership or whatever, who can now, there's a lot more a lot more resource and a lot more benefit to them. But what about the homeowners themselves? What can they expect to improve as a result of the merger?
Mm-hmm. Well, as we've touched on it, you've got a much more authoritative voice there, so it can only improve the whole industry.
Right.
We've obviously got the regulation north of the border, but with changes that's happening down south, we can learn from that.
Yeah.
That might well feed up north of the border as well.
Okay.
So it can only help that and help the whole industry. It'll help improve and raise standards. It'll help with the regulation as well, and our work with the Scottish Government as well brings our perspective as a factor and dealing with homeowners and feeding that into these groups and giving them the knowledge so that when there's changes made to the legislation, it's got factor input in it and will be there to aim to help the homeowner.
Okay, good. Andrew, a final word from you? Homeowners?
Well, two factors meet in a bar or a coffee shop, and they have a conversation, and when they do that, they share knowledge. A thing happened to me, this building, a story, a learning outcome, and that's called community.
Yeah.
So, and if you create a community, if you enable shared learning, shared experiences, everybody benefits, and that goes directly through to the customer, the person living in their home. So there's a community piece to it, and then there is the doing the right thing in terms of in terms of policy. So, for example, disrepair. If we can crack that nut in terms of disrepair, if we can get buildings to be well funded, to be maintained properly, that again, it's to the benefit of the consumer, not both financially in terms of their asset, but also, of course, their lived experience when they walk up that path, when they've climbed their stairs to their home. The place feels good. And as I say, I kind of circle back. That goes to every different aspect of their lives. Good housing changes people's lives. So, and anything we can do to equip factors, to support factors in creating good housing, it really matters. It matters to society. It matters to individuals. So, it sounds like a high ambition, but that's the truth. That's the truth. Good housing really counts. So, anything that we can do to support that has to be a good thing.
And that is a great thing to end on. Thank you very much, Andrew. Thanks for your time. Neale, brilliant. Thanks for coming into the studio as well. Thanks, gents.